I do a great impression of a hot dog. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 29 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about proper brushing techniques. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Now, as some of you may have known, I live in Canada, and this weekend is Thanksgiving weekend, so it's a long weekend for us, and I'm just excited to relax, take some time off, and hopefully go see a movie in theaters over the weekend. I still haven't seen Judy, the movie about Judy Garland. I've been wanting to go see it. I haven't had an opportunity, so I'm hoping that maybe this weekend I can swing by to a theater, go check it out. It's a movie I've been looking forward to. I'm quite a big fan of Judy Garland, and this movie kind of is a snapshot of the kind of end of her life when she tries to rekindle her career and stuff like that. So it's something that I'm wanting to watch. I'm not sure if I would do a movie review episode about it. I might just mention it in passing if I do see it. But this week's topic is a movie review. I went and saw Joker. If you've seen it, great. We'll talk about it here. If you haven't, how my movie reviews work, as always, is I do non-spoilers first, and then I will give you a big old warning that we're about to move into the spoiler territory. There is stuff to be spoiled about this movie, but there's enough non-spoiler stuff that I can definitely talk about my feelings on the movie in a non-spoiler manner, so why don't I just get started? And obviously, the number one thing to talk about this movie is the performance by Joaquin Phoenix. His performance is clearly the best part of the movie by far. If you're going to go see this movie for any reason, it's going to be for that. And if that's all you take away from the movie, that's all you take away from it. It is actually most of what I took away from the movie. I will get more into my negatives a little later on, but his performance is really top-notch, 100%. So let me just give you a basic kind of rundown of the story here. So Joaquin Phoenix plays Arthur Curry? No, Arthur Curry is Aquaman. Who does he play? What is his character's name? Is it Arthur? I'm pretty sure. I don't know. He plays the Joker. So before the Joker, he has some other name, which I don't bother to remember. And it's the movie is basically just about how his life really sucks, and it's awful, and everyone is mean, and it's kind of his descent into madness. And he has this condition where he laughs uncontrollably for no reason, even if a situation is not funny, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing really special going on here in regards to storytelling. It's all very basic, all very simple. There's nothing new here as far as the story goes. And that's like a big negative for me in this movie, is this script is very predictable and kind of color by numbers. Like, you're sitting there and you're watching the movie and be like, oh, this is probably going to happen. And then sure enough, it does. Thinking about another little plot point that's going on, oh, this is probably going to happen because of that. And sure enough, it does. I wish that this movie would have tried a little bit harder in being more original in that sense, because there's a lot of things in here that I've seen before. A lot of people are drawing parallels to The King of Comedy, a movie by Martin Scorsese, with this movie. There's definitely some Fight Club type stuff moments. Yeah, it's really just kind of a weak story. And, like, it's like, I want to say that I liked the movie, but I more enjoyed his performance than anything else. So this movie is directed by Todd Phillips, who is most well known for directing the Hangover movies. And he said something online about how you can't make comedies anymore because everybody's too sensitive and it's all this stuff. You can't make fun of anything or someone's going to be offended. And, like, he has a point, but at the same time, who cares if people are offended? I don't care. If you have a joke to make, just tell a joke. It's fine. Do it. That's how comedy works. Is your joke is not going to work for everybody, but if it's funny, it's funny. That's what I'm hearing a lot actually about Jojo Rabbit, the new movie by Taika Waititi, which I'm so excited to go see. I cannot wait. But it's in the high 70s on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and that's because it doesn't work for everybody. It's a movie about a Nazi youth who is like just trying to be the best Nazi that he can, and it's a satire about like that ideology, right? So you can make stories and jokes about whatever you want, and people are going to take it how they want, and that's fine. You can still make comedies. It's basically my point. So Todd Phillips is wrong in that sense, but he is right in the sense that someone's going to be offended about something because that's just how things are these days. But in any case, I guess he's done making comedies and now he's making like serious dramas like this movie. Another big plus about this movie is how this movie looks and feels. The cinematography is really dynamic and I was super impressed with how this movie looks. All of the shots are beautiful in their own way. I use the word beautiful in the sense that they're constructed meticulously. If you look into like the color palettes and the depth of field, and everything is just so, and I really appreciate when a movie goes to that lengths to have your movie look and feel a certain way, and this movie definitely achieves that. So Joaquin Phoenix's performance and the cinematography are, for me, the top 2 points in favor of this movie. Like, good job for that. It's excellent. I'd be very surprised if Joaquin Phoenix was not nominated for an Oscar for his performance. I would like to see this movie nominated for cinematography, but because I haven't seen all the other movies and only 5 get nominated in that category per year, I don't know how it holds up to some other films, but I did really like the look and feel of this movie. It came across very well. I don't know who the cinematographer was. I didn't look it up because I'm just not very good at what I do here. The score is also really good. I found the music to be quite chilling, and in the scenes where you need to feel uncomfortable, the music really comes in and makes you feel uncomfortable. This movie does a really good job of making you feel things. Now, more feel things in the sense that like at the moment you feel them, but there's nothing really lasting about those feelings. Like, because this movie doesn't really have a whole lot of shock value, I walked away thinking like, oh yeah, it was good, but then after thinking of the movie more, it didn't resonate with me as strongly. It didn't have a lasting impact. And so because of that, I think I'm ending up not ranking this movie as high as I normally would with a comic book movie, because I normally really like this kind of stuff. But there's just something about this movie, and I do really think it comes from the story being so lackluster. In the end, like, all movies are storytelling, and so you need to tell me an engaging story in order to keep me like entertained, or I guess invested. Yeah, invested is the right word. So if you're not keeping your audience invested by telling a compelling story, then everything else is just, it's just there, and it's nothing. It has nothing else has any meaning if you're not telling an impactful story. Now, this movie is like, I'm holding up a mirror to society, and look at how awful people treat other people, and this is exactly how our world works, and that's fine up until a certain point. There's a very specific point in this movie, which I'm going to talk about in spoilers, where one of the characters says word for word exactly what the message of this movie is, and I don't like that, because people aren't stupid. We can see subtext, we can feel subtext, we can figure it out. If that moment in the movie didn't exist and it played out a little differently, I would be a little, like, I would treat this movie a little better, but it didn't. I don't like when things are just laid out for you and you're being basically spoon-fed this movie's message. I don't like that in movies. It's not good. Stop doing it. Forget it. People aren't stupid. Your audience will be able to figure out what you're trying to say just by subtext. And so that's just something that really bothers me. It's no good. I'm gonna talk about it later. This movie also is, it's a very good standalone. There's nothing that makes me feel there's going to be any kind of sequel or anything that's going to tie into this movie, and that's fine. If DC just works towards making just like really solid standalone films, that's great. Hopefully they make movies that are better than this one, but at the same time, it's better It's better than Justice League. It's better than Suicide Squad. Everybody knows how much I hate Suicide Squad. What a stupid movie. Just, it's so bad. What is happening in Suicide Squad? I'm not going to talk about that though. Suicide Squad is awful. Joker is better, but it's also not great. So I don't understand what's going on over at DC when all of their movies, they're either trying to make them like jovial in a sense and it's just not working, like Suicide Squad, and it looks the exact same for Birds of Prey. I thought the newest trailer for Birds of Prey was awful. Just like just a train wreck of a movie. I have no interest in watching it. I'm not going to go see it in theaters for sure. And then they have movies that are just super serious. There's no humor in this movie. I laughed, I think, twice in the entire film. It's about 2 hours long, and I think I laughed twice. Now that would be fine if, like, I'm willing to forgive no humor if I'm captivated by everything else. And because I wasn't, I probably would have needed a little more humor to keep me in. But because this movie doesn't have that, here we are back at square one. This movie's not doing anything for me. What's going on? What this movie has, it doesn't have humor, but what it does have is a whole lot of smoking and a whole lot of dancing and a whole lot of Joaquin Phoenix without his shirt on. Now, whether the stuff without his shirt on is just to show off how much weight he lost and the transformation he went into becoming this character, sure, that's fine. But like every second scene, like he almost never wears a shirt. It's super weird. He's smoking all the time, but he has no money. So I don't understand how he's getting cigarettes, how he's buying them all the time. Like he loses his job in the movie and all of this stuff, and he's like dirt poor, but yet he has enough money for cigarettes to just be chain smoking them. He's smoking in almost every scene in the movie. And then there's just a whole lot of him dancing. There's music playing, and he'll just dance around in slow motion or in regular speed. There's a whole lot of close-ups of his face while he's dancing. I don't understand why I need to see all of that. And maybe I'm unnecessarily hating on all the dancing and stuff, because now at this point it's just a compound effect of everything that bothers me about this movie is just adding up and adding up and adding up, because the movie's just not as good as I expected it to be or as I hoped it to be. We can have really good comic book movies that are serious and take on a somber tone. Avengers Endgame is a pretty serious movie. A lot of people are really sad. It's almost 3 hours long, but yet there's a lot of good humor in it. There's a lot of good story in it, and I'm engaged for all those 3 hours, and it just flies by. I love that movie. Logan is a great example. Very, very serious. All the comic book elements are there. Also not a lot of humor in that movie, but it's telling a really interesting story about this character who's just been through hell in a different way that Joker has, and how he's living, how he's moving forward, and this kind of journey that he goes on with this little girl. Very good movie. Excellent. Fascinating. I love it. This movie doesn't hold up to movies like that, and when I have such good movies to compare it to, I have a standard of what's good, and this movie for me, it unfortunately doesn't quite meet those expectations. So why don't I talk a little bit more in depth about why those things maybe don't work for me? And so this is the official warning for spoilers. We're going to move into events that happen in the movie. So if you have not seen Joker, go check out the movie if you want. Like, I'm not giving it a glowing endorsement. See how you like it, come back, let's have a conversation. I want to hear what other people have to say. At this point, I don't know anyone who has seen it besides myself, and I want to talk about it because there's things going on in this movie that just confound me. So here we go. First thing I want to talk about is Thomas Wayne sucks. It's not even Thomas Wayne, like the way he is in the comic books or the way he is in any adaptation. It's just, he's an awful person. And everyone in this movie pretty much is an awful person. And why is this the case? There's maybe one guy, the dwarf character. I don't know his name, but he doesn't kill him because he said he was nice to him, and he lets him go, which I guess is fine. It gives him a little bit of a shred of humanity. But a character who kills his mom and all these other people, I just don't understand why that happened. He should have just killed him because he's crazy. Now, another big question is this a Joker movie? Is this a movie about the character of the Joker? I'm gonna say no, for a few different reasons. And that's because the Joker is a comic book character, and he's over the top, and he's ridiculous, and they did a lot of changes to the character in the sense that it could be gritty and realistic, and it's really just a movie about a crazy person who murders a few people and accidentally starts a revolution. He just kind of fumbles his way through the plot. And I don't think that's really what the Joker is or who the Joker is. This movie could just have easily been about crazy Joe Davola from Seinfeld, and the plot would have been very similar, would have played out the exact same way, and there wouldn't have been really anything different about it because it's like, that's not a comic book character. We're not getting the comic book elements in a comic book movie about a comic book character. Now, going back to my example of Logan, there are very serious themes and stuff going on in that movie, but there's still claws growing out of people's hands and people getting chopped up and shot at and heads getting cut off and things like that. That's not what this movie is. And I think this movie maybe needed a little bit of that in order to make it more enjoyable and more believable and a little more faithful to the character. Like I was saying in the non-spoiler section, this movie's fairly unoriginal. We have a lot of the King of Comedy. There's a lot of Taxi Driver in this movie. And there's also a lot of Fight Club. And we actually have a very Fight Club-esque moment where it's revealed that his kind of relationship with Zazie Beetz' character was all in his head, which you can see coming from a mile away. Like, so far away. Like, there's, like, the scene early on where he kills those 3 guys on the train, and then he's covered in blood, and he goes back to the apartment, and he knocks on her door, and she opens it up, and he just kisses her, and then it implies that they sleep together. There's no way that would happen. Like, it's so outlandish and ridiculous, and just without any thought, like, for sure, that happened in his head. There's just no way that she would just let this guy covered in blood kiss her, make his way into his apartment, and then sleep with him. It just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't. So then when you get to the part where she's like, your name's Arthur, right? And it flashes back, and it shows all the scenes where he's with her and spending time with her, and she's actually not there at all. You see it coming, like, it's just there. Boom. All the pieces are there, and it's not, like, very well hidden like it is in Fight Club, or maybe because of movies like Fight Club, it's just a lot more predictable now. But if you're trying to do twists like that, just don't make them. If you're trying to do something like different and things like that, just do a little bit better. That's all I'm asking, is do better. And then once that Fight Club moment is kind of revealed, it brings in a whole other slew of problems, because once things are happening inside a character's head, now the entirety of the movie, all of the events that just happened, are up to question. I don't know what's real, what's not, what happened in his head, what happened in the real world. I just don't know. Did anything happen? Was he just in a insane asylum the whole time? The movie suggests that it might be, that it might have been in his head the whole time, but he could not have been. Like, he killed a nurse at the very end, and his, like, footsteps are all bloody, so maybe he fully became the Joker by the end of the movie, and then they caught him, and then he escaped again. And there's such a lack of clarity, and I would like to know what's real, what's not, and where the character ends up. It's a very ambiguous ending, and I'm not on board with it. I'm fine. Like, another example of an ambiguous ending where it works. Inception. The ending of Inception kind of, like, makes you go, what? But that's because everything before that moment made sense and was interesting and engaging and had me invested the entire time. Because this movie did not do those things. Having this kind of ambiguous ending only frustrates me. And the ending of Inception frustrates me in a different kind of way. This is a negative frustration. I don't like it. The more I think about it, I don't like it. And like I just want movies to be good. And I was really looking forward to this movie, and it let me down supremely. And it is one of those ones that the more I think about it, the more it just wasn't that good. And the last DC movie to come out was Aquaman, I think. And Aquaman was pretty entertaining. Now, its story wasn't crazy or ridiculous. It didn't have amazing performances like this movie, but it was just a good time. It was just entertaining. James Wan knows what's up, and it could be tied into the DC universe. It could not be, who knows. But this Joker movie, it's really just its own thing, and just not as good as it could have been, in my humble opinion. There are some theories, though, going around as to if this movie could be connected to the other DC movies because it takes place in 1981 and Bruce Wayne is just a little kid, and because he's not really the Joker, he's just like some guy who created this revolution. Could he have inspired Jared Leto's Joker to become the Joker back like years and years later down the road? Could Joaquin Phoenix have inspired Jared Leto's character to become the Joker? I don't know. That's a real interesting theory. I feel like it's not true. I also feel like this movie's not going to get a sequel, which is fine by me. I don't need to see a sequel to this movie. Also, do you know what else I don't need to see? How many times on screen have I seen Martha and Thomas Wayne get murdered by someone in an alleyway and pearls flying? How many times do I need to watch that? I don't. If I never see it in a movie again, that's fine. Because it happens in Batman. It happens in Batman Returns. It happens in Batman Forever. I don't think it happens in Batman and Robin, but it happens in Batman Begins. It happens in Batman the Animated Series. It happens in Batman v Superman. It just never stops. We know the origin story of Batman. We know what happens to his parents. We know they get shot in an alleyway and Martha's pearls get broken and they go flying everywhere. We understand. This is not something we need to see again and again. A great example of not following this path of showing us the same thing again and again is the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. In 2002's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Uncle Ben dies. In 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man, Uncle Ben dies. By the time we get to Spider-Man Homecoming, Kevin Feige says, hey, people have seen it twice. They know that Uncle Ben dies. That's essential to the Spider-Man story. So what does he do? Uncle Ben is already dead before the movie happens. It's not something that we have to see because it's something that we know already happens and we don't need to watch it again. And this movie, it's just one more thing to bother me. And it's like, it doesn't even have anything to do with the Joker's character. It kind of does because he like started this clown revolution, but he's not there when they get murdered. And the only reason we see it is because Thomas Wayne shows up earlier in the movie a couple of times, and so they felt they just needed to put it in there. We even if they would have shown just Thomas and Martha and Bruce coming out of the Theater of Zorro and turning and going down the alley and someone following them, and that's it, that would have been much, much better. Because then they're like, okay, so like they're about to die, it's fine, we don't need to see it. Because we've seen it before. We don't need to see it again. And it's wasted minutes in a movie because we know how it's going to play out. Nothing is different unless you're changing the history of what's going on. Maybe if they were going to have Bruce and Martha get killed and then Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, like there are in a couple of different comic book universes, there are stories like that where Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, then fine, do something like that, and then do a sequel to this movie with Thomas Wayne as Batman fighting Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. Great, amazing, that's fine, do that. But they didn't do that, and so as a result, I don't like the choice that they made, and that's it. I'm frustrated by this movie. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'll just start wrapping up at this point. So if you have seen Joker, I would love to know other people's opinions. Were you frustrated like I was, or do you think it's just the greatest movie ever and you love it? If so, that's amazing and I'm very happy for you. But unfortunately, the movie didn't do that for me, but I would like to know what you thought about it. I would also like to know what you think about this podcast. You can go ahead and find me on social media. I'm on Twitter at PottleNathan and on Instagram at Pottle Productions. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and bearing with me while I kind of half rant about this movie. And if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.